Vital records more than meets the eye? We all know what birth and death certificates are, right? They mark the beginning and end of our lives. They're official documents handled by government offices. Seems pretty straightforward. But what if I told you there's more to it? What if these certificates are actually contracts? Contracts that bind us to a system of financial obligation. That's the argument some people are making. And it's worth taking a closer look. This perspective draws on the concept of private merchant law. It suggests that vital records, specifically birth and death certificates, function as financial instruments in a complex system. Think of it like this. Your birth certificate isn't just proof of your identity, it's a financial IOU, a promise to pay. Now this isn't about some shadowy conspiracy theory. It's about understanding the potential legal and financial implications of a system we often take for granted. We're talking about how these documents might be used to create a financial identity for us, even before we're old enough to understand what that means. It's about questioning the power dynamics at play. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into the world of vital records and explore whether they're just official documents or something much more. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew. Let's start at the beginning. Birth certificates. You get one when you're born. Seems simple enough, but some argue that this piece of paper is actually a contract, one you never agreed to. It's like signing a lease agreement in your sleep. Not ideal, right? The argument goes that your birth certificate creates a financial identity for you, linking you to the US economic system. This identity, they claim, comes with a presumption of debt. Basically, they're saying you're born owing something. This might sound crazy, but think about it. Your birth certificate is used to get a social security number, open bank accounts, apply for credit. All these things are tied to your financial life. So, is it such a stretch to think that the document that started it all might have financial implications? Of course, this is a complex issue with no easy answers, but it raises important questions about consent, transparency, and the power of seemingly simple documents. Because if our birth certificates are contracts, shouldn't we at least be aware of the terms and conditions? If birth certificates are the opening act, then death certificates are the grand finale. Just as your birth certificate supposedly creates a financial identity, your death certificate, according to this theory, settles the account. Morbid accounting, isn't it? See, proponents of this idea argue that when you die, your death certificate triggers the final accounting of your debt. This debt, they say, is calculated based on your earnings and assets accumulated throughout your life. It's important to note that this interpretation isn't about literal debt, like owing money to a bank. It's about a theoretical obligation to the state, one that's supposedly tied to the benefits and privileges of citizenship. Again, this is a controversial concept, but it highlights the importance of understanding the systems we live in, even the ones that seem straightforward. Because whether or not you buy into this particular theory, it's clear that vital records play a significant role in our lives, both legally and financially. Section 4. The economics of vital records, a revenue-generating system. Now let's talk money, because vital records aren't free. You have to pay for copies of your birth certificate, your marriage license, your death certificate. Well, not you, but you get the idea. But where does that money go? Vital records offices, the government agencies responsible for these documents, generate revenue through fees, searches, and other services. This revenue, they argue, is essential for maintaining accurate records and providing important services to the public. However, some critics argue that the fees for vital records are excessive and that the system disproportionately impacts low-income individuals who may struggle to afford multiple copies of these essential documents. They also question the lack of transparency surrounding how this revenue is used. This raises concerns about access and equity, because if vital records are essential for navigating society, shouldn't everyone have equal and affordable access to them? Or are we creating a system where some people are priced out of their own history? Section 5. Challenging the system. Are there ways to opt out? So, let's say you're convinced. You believe that vital records are contracts, and you're not cool with the terms. What can you do? Well, that's where things get tricky. Some proponents of this theory advocate for challenging the system through legal means. This might involve filing legal notices, demanding transparency from vital records offices, or even exploring alternative forms of identification. However, it's important to note that these strategies are untested and potentially risky. The legal system is complex, and challenging established norms is never easy. Plus, there's no guarantee of success. Still, The fact that people are even attempting to challenge the system speaks to a growing desire for transparency and individual agency, because ultimately, it's about questioning the power structures that shape our lives and exploring whether we have more control than we realize. Section 6, Transparency and Individual Empowerment. It's crucial to understand the implications of these documents and the systems they represent. Whether or not you see vital records as contracts, they undeniably play a significant role in our lives. These records grant us access to essential services, shape our financial identities, and define our legal existence. Transparency is key to understanding these systems. We need to know how these systems work, where the money goes, and what rights we have as individuals. Asking questions, demanding accountability, and advocating for a fairer system are essential steps. This isn't just about birth and death certificates. It's about reclaiming our narratives, understanding our place in the world, and having a say in how our lives are documented. This is a conversation worth having. GAP 3S, Section 7, The Rights of the Individual. The person named in the certificate, whether a birth or death certificate, may have certain rights related to privacy, control over their identity, and economic interests under doctrines such as 1. The right of publicity, the right to control the commercial use of one's identity. 1. The right to privacy, the right to be left alone and to prevent unwanted intrusion. 1. Common law rights in one's name and likeness, the right to use or refuse use of one's identity. 1. Contractual autonomy and informed consent, the right to accept or reject contractual obligations including those imposed by state registration. Let's break these down. First, the right of publicity is recognized in many jurisdictions as the right of an individual to control the commercial use of their name, image, likeness, or personal identity. If birth certificates and vital records are being leveraged for financial transactions, such as in U.S. bankruptcy proceedings, then the person named in the certificate could argue that their identity is being used for economic gain without their consent. This unauthorized commercial use violates common law and statutory right of publicity laws. Legal challenges could include filing a cease and desist letter or even lawsuits under state right of publicity laws. Second, the right to privacy suggests that individuals should have control over who accesses their personal information. Birth registration is done without the subject's consent, potentially violating privacy rights. If the state uses these records to impose obligations like taxation or identification tracking, it could be argued that this is a form of involuntary servitude, violating the 13th Amendment. Legal challenges could involve invoking privacy rights under the U.S. Constitution and demanding removal from public databases. Third, contractual autonomy and the right to reject adhesion contracts. Many legal theories suggest that a birth certificate functions as a contractual document, creating a records, then that person may argue unjust enrichment. The state monetizes birth-death records through contracts, trust accounts, and securities without compensating the individual. Legal challenges could involve demanding full disclosure of all commercial uses of the birth record and pursuing claims for compensation under state unjust enrichment and identity theft statutes. In summary, individuals have valid legal grounds to challenge the unauthorized commercial use of their identity, the imposition of financial obligations without informed consent, and the use of their personal data in violation of privacy and property rights. Through right of publicity laws, privacy claims, contractual challenges, and unjust enrichment arguments, individuals can demand disclosure, financial compensation, and removal from unlawful databases. Remember, knowledge is power. Understanding your rights is the first step to reclaiming control over your identity and personal information.